He told me I didn't belong and called security. 3 words, a hand signal, and suddenly the whole park was looking at me like I'd set a fire when really I was just drawing algebra in the dirt, with a stick turning X into a treasure and numbers into clues, while Lily sat cross-legged beside me with her gold backpack tossed aside, and a hopeful look I hadn't seen on a rich kid's face in a long time, you know what I mean? That flash where something finally makes sense and you can breathe again. Her dad is Preston Hale, the guy from the billboard shoes that probably cost more than my last year of food, and he steps between us like I'm a threat. "Step away from my daughter," he says, voice flat, guards jogging up, hands on radios pat me down. Like always, they find 3 library books, my notebook full of equations, and half a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in napkins. Yeah, that happened. And one guard mutters about stolen stuff until I tell him to scan the barcodes. Lily's crying. I'm staring at my shoes because if I look Preston in the eye, my voice might shake, and he flips through Lily's notes anyway and sees my drawings and metaphors in her handwriting, and there's this flicker like a light trying to turn on. Then he kills it and says I'm manipulating her, that people like me are good at that. He waves them off, and I collect my books, nod once. "Crystal clear, sir, and I can't help it," I say. Maybe ask why she needed help from me in the first place, and that lands between us like a chess piece he doesn't know how to move. My name is Noah Reed, 12. When this all started, a black kid living between the Bayview shelter and the Seabrook Library, the 2 safest places I knew, my mom used to say, education is the one thing they can't take from you, and then life tried to prove her wrong, but I held on anyway, because when you have nothing, knowledge becomes everything, and the library becomes a church that doesn't care what you're wearing, as long as you're quiet and hungry in the right way. 3 days later, Lily shows up at the stacks with her hoodie up, and that same eyes-forward determination kids get when they've decided they're done being embarrassed. I'm explaining supply and demand, with sugar packets to a couple younger kids, and she waits and then says, "Come tutor me at my house," and I laugh, because that sounds like a prank the world would play on me, but she's serious. My dad will listen in his office, not in a park. And I tell her rich people don't like being wrong, bad for business. And she says, then let's make it good business. And I don't know if it's bravery or stubbornness, but I say yes. And the next day I'm walking past paintings worth more than my neighborhood into a study that feels like a courtroom. Preston behind a desk, like a Judge Lily on the edge of a chair, and Ms. Whitfield, the 500 an hour tutor, standing by the board, like a prosecutor who already knows the verdict. "Let's start simple," she says, and writes calculus in tight, perfect letters. I answer without paper. She tightens, tries a differential equation. Physics then swerves into econ and literature. I don't flex, I just explain. Show the why under the how, where her method adds noise and how to take a cleaner path. And slowly the air changes. You can hear it in the way a room goes quiet when certainty starts losing to curiosity. Preston leans forward, give him something harder, and for 20 minutes it's just chalk and breath, and the sound of a life opening in a place where I was never meant to stand. And when we're done, Ms. Whitfield clutches her bag like it's a lifeboat, and Preston fires her in one sentence that feels like it costs him something. Then he looks at me and says, "I owe you an apology, not like a headline, like a man who understands the bill just came due." He offers money to tutor Lily, and I tell him I don't want money, I want a chance to prove where you're from isn't the same as where you can go. And he nods like maybe for the first time he's seeing a person and not a problem. The very next morning, he walks me into the Hale Dynamics boardroom, glass on all sides. Water shining like a promise outside, executives in suits that whisper when they move. He calls me a special consultant. And the CFO actually laughs, not cruel, just bored. And I tell them their Tokyo integration plan is going to fail, and the laughter gets louder until I start listing the parts. Mandatory retirement packages under Japanese law that eat 8 points out of their projected savings, a cultural training budget that's a third of what it needs to be a currency hedge built on political stability that won't exist after next month's election. And then I point at line 23B, page 47, the supplier exchange rate formula. They've been copying since 2019. And the COO's jaw tightens, and a strategy lead mutters, "He's right." And all of a sudden the mirror is up, and nobody likes what they see. And I'm not trying to dunk on anyone. I'm trying to show them that if you treat numbers like a mask, you miss faces. If you treat systems like machines, you miss people, and the room shifts from chuckling to arguing, and then to quiet again. That deep quiet where decisions get made and Preston says, "You just saved us millions," and I shake my head. "Your team will save you millions." I just turned the lights on, and he says, "Come to the Foundation Gala tomorrow as my guest." And I say yes with one condition. I bring someone who taught me how to keep a light on when the power's out. Her name is Ruth Silverhair, wrapped in a scarf, hands steady from years of holding other people's storms, night. Volunteer at the shelter. And the reason I never forgot to be kind when I was tired. She says she doesn't belong in rooms like that. And I tell her, neither do I. That's the point. And we walk into that Bayside ballroom, upright and quiet, heads turn, because heads always turn when a story breaks its assigned lane. And Preston sees Ruth and goes pale like an old piece of paper someone just pulled out of a drawer. Later I learn the twist I still can't say, without tasting metal, that years ago the Hale Foundation rejected a grant from my father, Dr. Samuel Reed work, that could have changed how we measure sustainable growth, and the letter was signed by Preston with 5 words that burned a hole in me when I read them, not aligned with priorities. So when I speak at the gala, I don't perform a grievance. I tell the truth about blind spots. You can only see when you step out from behind your comfort. I ask them to count better, to count everyone, and a handful of people don't clap right away because they're actually listening. Preston is one of them, and he asks me to sit for the Bramblewood Academy entrance exam, his daughter's school, the one where money and merit get confused on purpose, and the head of school, Dr. Caulfield, looks at me like I'm a story she already knows the ending to, and I tell her to give me the hardest version, with no warm-up. And I finish early, and correct 3 errors in their key, and she goes white and Lily whoops, and I don't feel proud, as much as I feel vindicated for all the kids who've been told to stay quiet and accept their place. The backlash comes fast. Hushed conversations, a parents' group that says I'm a disruption, Ms. Whitfield orbiting them like a moth that can't find another porch light. But something else comes too, the scholarship kids pulling their chairs to my table. Lily dropping her tray with a look that dares the room to say something. A janitor unlocking the science lab early because mornings are kinder to certain brains. A bus driver letting me ride 1 stop past when I fell asleep on a chapter that finally clicked. It's small stuff and it's everything. 6 weeks after the park, I stand on a different stage in front of shareholders and say the parts nobody says in rooms like that. The supply chain slippage that hides in spreadsheets, the performative diversity that moves numbers on paper, but not people into leadership, the cost of not listening to the folks who actually touch the work. And then I say the part that surprises me most, that I don't blame Preston anymore. I blame the comfort that builds a throne inside men like him and calls it wisdom. And I ask them to implement models that measure value without subtracting humanity, my father's frameworks, not because they're mine, but because they work. The vote passes, not unanimous, because real change never is. They launch the Reed Center for Open Learning. Ruth agrees to lead community programs, and I tell Preston, I don't want statues or staged checks. I want bus passes, smaller classes, librarians with hours that meet kids where they are. Tutors who know that a late assignment sometimes means dinner came late too, he says yes, and he means it. I can see that now. I wish the next part was a montage, but life doesn't cut like that. Ruth lands in the hospital with a heart that's been overworking for years. I sleep in a chair and hold her hand, and Preston walks in without a tie and no cameras and says the foundation is covering care, and he's found a modest apartment near the water, and Ruth asks the only question that matters. What's the catch? And he says, accountability, and she nods because she can spot a real answer. 10 miles away, and by spring, his library is a neighborhood classroom. The scholarship table at Bramblewood is no longer a table but a wing, and the rumor mill runs out of fuel because the kids keep winning in plain sight. A year after Harbor Park, I give a valedictorian speech that isn't about me. I talk about belonging, about not wanting a seat at a table that measures worth by wealth, about building a new table that measures potential, and leaves an extra chair at the end, just in case a kid like me shows up late and out of breath. Then we walk back to the chess tables, and someone has carved a line into the wood that hits me right in the chest. Brilliance lives everywhere. You just have to look for it. I set up my dad's old set, and Preston asks if I forgive him, and I tell him I forgive the man who asks that question. The other man has to live with his choices, and he nods with tears that finally have somewhere to go. We play until the sky turns the color of a second chance. My phone buzzes with college offers, and I tell them I'll come, but not yet, because the Reed Center is opening in 3 more cities, and we need tutors and bus routes and quiet rooms where a kid can fail forward without getting labeled. And if that sounds naive to you, fine, cynicism has better PR than hope. But hope pays out if you give it time. So tell me where you stand. Was Preston wrong at the start, or brave at the end? And which one matters more when both are true? Have you seen a gatekeeper holding a gate that didn't need holding, or someone step aside and let a crowd through? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me, teach me something I missed. And if this changed how you see the kid on your bus, or the person you pass on your block, hit like, subscribe if you want more of these messy, true stories, and share this with the one friend who needs a reason to believe the door they keep pushing might finally open if someone stands beside them and pushes too.